Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and today I thought it'd be fun to talk about the two-handed tapping technique. So if you like videos like these, just stick around or hit, like if you like it. And basically, tapping is just where you use your hands separately, kind of like a piano player uses their hands separately to create each individual note. So instead of holding a note down and plucking it, we kind of used speed and force to have the note ring out on its own. So on the U bass, it's definitely going to be easier to tap with the rubber strings, the polyurethane strings, rather than the metal strings. So just know that you can tap on metal strings. It just takes a lot more pressure and just a little bit more kind of force, I guess. But that's really the main thing. So you can tap with your left hand or you can tap with your right hand. And one of the secrets, I know a lot of people when they try this technique, they put their finger down and immediately take it away like that. And in order for the note to ring out, you have to hold the note down once it hits. So it's like almost like you pinch the note with a little bit of speed going into that. Does that make sense? So you could think of it like a hammer or something, but it doesn't bounce off. It just stays in. So, and then however long you want the note to ring out, you have to hold your hand down that long. So if you want to do a quarter note, 1, 2, you let go. If you want to do like a half note, 1, 2, then you let go of the pressure that you're using after tapping. Hey Seth, how's it going? So once again, today's live stream is just all about two-handed tapping. So that's what your left hand would do, right? So you have your thumb on the back and you're kind of using the pressure. And I must also say, since I had that little buzz note, what happened there was I've tapped too far back. You have to be in the middle of the fret or slightly forward in the square. So if you look at the two frets surrounding this, the two pieces of metal that are surrounding it, I'm closer to this side, if that makes sense, within the square rather than that side. So I'm not back here. I'm here or right in the middle. So the middle is fine for the polyurethane strings. But with the metal strings, you'll only need a little bit less pressure if you do that. So guys, real quick, I'd just like to check with you. Can you hear me okay? Is the volume too quiet, too loud? I'm going to scoot this microphone over here because I feel like it's very far away. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear things or if it needs to go up. Okay, so it says yes. Awesome. Good to hear. Thanks, Emma. So now that being said about tapping, you have the pressure, you push down. Then with the right hand, it's the same kind of thing. I usually anchor my thumb somewhere. So a lot of times it's easy to anchor it on the top of the neck up here. And then you can kind of almost use it to pivot your hand down to get that speed that you need for the tapping on this hand. So most of the time, our right hand's not as comfortable with this. Our left hand's used to fretting notes. So just pushing down a little bit harder, maybe you already have that kind of feel in that hand. But this right hand, we're not usually used to doing that. And so for a lot of people, they'll use one finger to tap, especially at first. For me, I would suggest the middle finger if you're going to just start tapping with one finger on the right hand. And that's because it's kind of more toward the center of your hand. So when you're using it kind of like that pivot, the weight will kind of go to that finger easier than the other ones, if that makes any sense. But you don't really need a lot of pressure on the polyurethane strings. So it's not like you really need a whole lot of force there. It's just easier to control that finger or your pointer finger. So that being said, you can kind of make melodies with this hand. So you may just want to practice doing things separate with the hands first. So here's a good thing you could do with the left hand. You could just play a scale using tapping. On the way down. You can practice doing things legato that are almost like hammer-ons after the first note, or you can practice doing them staccato where each tap note is separate. Okay, and then on the, by the way, if you're wondering what that is, if you don't know the major scale, one, I suggest maybe don't worry about tapping right now and just go back and learn a little bit of music theory. But if you're dead set on being able to tap, then what I would say is you're going to use your middle finger to play a third fret on the A string, and I'll just give you the fret numbers. Third fret, fifth fret on the A string. Then on the D string, you'll get the second, then the third, then the fifth. And notice which fingers I'm using. I'm using pointer for the second frets, middle for the third frets, pinky for the fifth frets. And if I had a fourth fret, I'd use my ring finger. It's one finger per fret. And then on the G string, we have the second fret, the fourth fret, and then the fifth fret. So that's index, ring, pinky on the G string. So that kind of helps, just kind of building up, seeing how much strength it takes and how much speed it takes to get your hand to do that. Seeing which fingers it's easier to tap with and which fingers it's more difficult to tap with, so that you can practice those things. So that's the left hand. With the right hand, at first we just want to work on accuracy because the frets are a lot smaller up here. So I would say just pick one finger, middle finger, your index finger. I'm going to use middle finger, and just practice playing little melodies. So you may not want to play a full scale here because you could do that, I mean, if you wanted to, but I'd say just mostly focus on tapping simple little melodies on the G string. So you could do something like 12th fret, 11th fret, 9th fret, 7th fret, and then back up. Because the thing you're going to have to get used to, since we're used to plucking and going right through the note, you're going to have to get used to your hands staying down after you've pressed the note. So definitely do this separately and not try to do both hands together at first, just so you can get a good sound out of those notes. Yet again, we're trying to tap in the middle of the fret or more towards the body. So it means if I'm in between these two frets, I can either be directly in the middle or a little bit more this way. If I'm too far back, it'll buzz. So that's why we don't want to do that. So then you're just working on your accuracy. Right? And once you've got your accuracy with that one finger, you can try adding another finger in. So now you could do index and middle if you wanted to. Right? So just kind of getting used to doing that. And then if you really want to have more kind of a fluid motion where everything's not staccato like that, then what I'd recommend is try doing 3 fingers. And you can tap some notes on the D string as well. But that's what I would do to get started, is just practice simple melodies with the right hand and then scales with the left hand. And then if we're going to try to play something together, I would do a very, very simple melody. You could make up a melody with the right hand. Like, what if we did that same melody? Why don't we make it that simple? So it's going to be like, I think I like that. That's probably about as simple as it gets. So I think that would be good exercise. So your right hand is responsible for growing 12, 11, 10. And what I'm doing is a half note on each one, except for a whole note on when I get to the 9th fret. Sorry, I said 10. I don't know why I said that. 12, 11, 9 is what I meant to say. So you're gonna hold the first one for 2 beats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that last one we're holding for 4 beats. And then with our left hand, we're just going to use the middle finger. So far in this song, this little exercise, we're just going to use the middle finger on both hands. So this is just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a G note and a C note. G is the 3rd fret on the E string. And we're just going to hold it out for 4 beats. And then we're going to do the same thing on the A string. So now we have to coordinate where our fingers hit together and where they don't. So the first note on each hand is going to be at the same time. So that means 3rd fret on the E string at the same time as 12th fret on the G string. So just practice doing that one note. Kind of get the hang of that. Just hitting those together. So then the 2nd note is just going to be the right hand moving to the 11th fret on the G string. So we've got, and our left hand's just going to stay put where it is. I'm still holding the note out there. Okay. And then the next note is going to line up where both of our hands hit together. It's going to be the 9th fret on the G string for the right hand and the 3rd fret on the A string for the left hand. So that's just something simple we can kind of do. Okay. And then we could do the reverse. So that would be another fret with the right hand on the G string and another 3rd fret on the A string with the left hand. Then the 11th fret by itself. And then now we're going to do 3rd fret on the E string with the left hand and 12th fret on the G string with the right hand. So that's kind of the basic thing to get used to the coordination between hands, where it's like they're not always hitting together. Sometimes the left hand is hitting by itself. And it might sound a little bit like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but not really. It's not quite what it is. It's much, much simpler than Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But yeah, it kind of has that vibe. It's very happy major scale sounding though. So I can see why I said that, Seth. But yeah, just doing that. And once you do that, you can try some other things. That could help you do the song that I released on, not this week, but the previous week when I did a tapping song. I'm trying to remember what I called that one. Tapping. That wasn't tapping techno. I think it was tapping techno. So that one was mostly just the middle fingers on each hand doing different notes. So once you have these skills, it's the same thing. It's just there are more notes. So that's really the only difference. So it's a little harder. There's a little more coordination stuff going on. But basically, you just look for where does the right hand hit by itself and where do the hands hit together? Where does the left hand hit by itself? And just kind of like use that coordination. So that's probably a good way to develop it, is just start with something really simple. Get used to the fact that both hands aren't going to always be working together and playing a note at this time. Sometimes they're going to be playing at a different time from each other. So that's probably the hardest thing to get used to on that tapping. But there's another style of tapping. So instead of just playing kind of like that, which is more like a piano where you're playing one thing that's a different part than the other hand, there's another kind of tapping where we just use both hands together to play single notes like arpeggios. So that would sound more like this kind of thing. That kind of thing. Whoops. I don't know why I did a major there. I meant to do minor. So that's kind of a fun one. So I'm going to slow it down so you can kind of see what I'm doing there. But basically, I'm just taking the notes of a G major arpeggio first. So let's just stick with that one and get the idea down. And if you don't know a G major arpeggio, that would be like the 3rd fret on the E string. Whoa, don't know why I'm getting so much buzz. Might have to do some work on the space. Anyway, 3rd fret on the E string, 2nd fret on the A string. So that's a G note and a B note for those that want to know the notes. 5th fret on the A string, which is a D note. 5th fret on the D string, which is a G note. And then 4th fret if we were to keep going. So basically, a one octave arpeggio would just be those first 4 notes. So why don't we just stop there? I was going to add that other note in, but why don't we just stop there? Basically, for this, your left hand will be responsible for the first two notes, and then your right hand will be responsible for the second two notes. Right. And Seth said that would be great for classical like Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Yes, this is the style of tapping that Stu Hamm used when he did the Moonlight Sonata cover. So this is that exact idea where basically you're taking the arpeggios and splitting them up between the hands. So yes, it's very much like that. Okay, it's great for that. So yeah, so your left hand with the first two notes, third fret on the E string, the middle finger, and then second fret on the A string. And I get that with my pointer finger. And then rather than using that same hand to get the other notes, I'm going to use the pointer finger of the right hand to get the fifth fret of the A string. And I'm going to use my middle finger of the right hand to get the fifth fret of the D string. So then it's a matter of getting the coordination between the hands. First note, second note, third note, fourth note. Left hand, right hand, right hand. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can get closer to the camera. So you're playing that G note with your middle finger, the B note with your pointer finger, and then your right hand's coming in playing the fifth fret on the A string, and then the fifth fret on the D string with your middle finger. And then you could practice going up and down. Whoops. And make sure that this hand doesn't mute the string by accident, just because of the way you're trying to hold the instrument. So what I'm doing there is third fret on the E string, second fret on the A string, fifth fret on the A string, fifth fret on the D string, then backwards. Fifth fret on the D string, fifth fret on the A string, second fret on the A string, third fret on the E string. Okay, and so then what people will do with that kind of technique a lot of times is they will they'll add another note to kind of give it a little bit more range. And usually the note they add is the fourth fret on the G string if you're doing a G major arpeggio. And that'll be with the right hand, and you can either get that with your pinky or your ring finger on the right hand. And then it's kind of fun to go backwards from there. So this would be like third fret on the E, second fret on the A, fifth fret on the A string, fifth fret on the D string, fourth fret on the G string, then we'll go back down, but we won't repeat the high note. Fifth fret on the D string, fifth fret on the A string, and then you could either keep going down, or you could just go back to the fifth fret on the D string. And I like that pattern because it's easy to do. And it kind of rounds off, you end up with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You end up with 8 notes. So it's like one full measure of eighth notes if you're tapping. Or half measure of 16th notes. So that way it kind of rounds off, and it's easier to do that than to go down to this note. I think because you have to get this hand out of the way in order to play that note. Whereas if you're coming back to this note, this hand doesn't have to do much, and there's nothing to move out of the way here. So I think that's why it's easy if you're trying to do something really fast. But what I would do to get used to that is start super duper slow and play with the metronome and play evenly. So you could just do quarter notes to a metronome, probably at like 80 or something, and just have them go boom, 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 until you get the pattern down where it's not confusing your hand. You may want to go down to even like 60, do it slower than this. And just practice that pattern until it becomes muscle memory. And I think what you'll find is if you do that to where you're so sick of playing it slow it's ridiculous, start to speed it up, it'll actually be easy to a certain point. Okay, and you might notice, I'm not sure if you can hear it on the other end, but the E string was kind of ringing out when I was doing that. And so that's what this little thing here is for, is to mute those strings that you don't want to ring out, because sometimes you're just going to end up with other string noise, right? Like when you play this note and then you let go of it, sometimes the low E will ring out, and we don't really want it to. So we have one of these little guys to mute the string. It might still ring out, but it won't be nearly as loud. So there's that. So then we could take this idea and move it to a different arpeggio. So what I do is I like going up a major scale, right? So I do a G major arpeggio, then an A minor arpeggio, then a B minor arpeggio, then a C major arpeggio. So really you just need to know the shapes of the arpeggios to do this, and you need to know what notes are in the G major scale. So knowing what chords are in the G major scale, I should say. So if you do a G major chord, that is your one chord of G. So we'll use this pattern for that. That's the pattern we've already gone over. So the next chord in G major would be an A minor chord. And it's confusing to explain like why, if you don't already know why an A minor chord is in the key of G major. But basically an A minor chord just consists of notes that are all in the G major scale, and it's the other note in the scale starting on A. So kind of confusing. We won't worry about that. But for the A minor pattern, what I'm doing is the 5th fret on the E string, then the 3rd fret on the A string, and that's just with the left hand once again. So I'm doing the ring finger to get the 5th fret on the E string, and the pointer finger to get the 3rd fret on the A string. Then we're going to go to the 7th fret on the A string with our right hand pointer finger, and then we'll go to the 7th fret on the D string with our middle finger on our right hand. And then our pinky, whoops, sorry, maybe we'll do a ring finger. We'll get the 5th fret on the G string. All right, so we got 5th, 3rd, 7th, 7th, 5th. And once again, it's 5th fret on the E string, 3rd fret on the A string, 7th fret on the A string, 7th fret on the D string, 5th fret on the G string, then back to the 7th fret on the D string, back to the 7th fret on the A string, and then back to the 7th fret on the D string. And that's our pattern there. So now you can go back and forth between a G major arpeggio and an A minor arpeggio. For a B minor arpeggio, we're literally going to shift all the notes that we did for the A minor arpeggio up 2 frets. So we really only have 2 shapes to do a major and a minor, but I think I'm getting too far into it with that. So just start with just those, the G major and the A minor arpeggio, and then you can kind of branch out from there. But that's good. Once again, from week to week, I have trouble remembering how to pronounce names. Is it Jockey? Choki? I can't remember. But anyway, thank you for hanging out. It's good to see you again. All right, so we got all that. So that's kind of the arpeggio style of tapping. Okay, so there's even more versions of tapping, and we could do one string tapping, which is still centered mostly around arpeggios. But it's a little bit different in that hammer-ons and pull-offs are also a little bit more prevalent in this version of tapping. So this is more like what Eddie Van Halen does for tapping. I think I made a video on Eddie Van Halen style tapping. But basically, you can do it all on one string if you wanted to. And what you do is you tap a note with the right hand, then you pull off to a left hand note, and then you hammer on to another left hand note, and then you could hammer on, you could go back to tapping and do the whole thing again. So that's the simple version. Yeah. So tap, then pull off to a note, then hammer on to a note. So the frets I'm doing right here are the 9th fret on the G string with I'm using my middle finger, like I said, because I just feel like I have more control over that finger than the pointer finger. You can do it with the pointer finger if you wanted to. It just feels more natural for me to do that with the middle finger. So tap with the 9th fret, pull off to the 2nd fret, all on the G string, and then hammer on to the 5th fret. Another thing you could do is where it's all pull-offs, have the 5th fret held down before you start on the left hand, and go 9th fret, then do a pull-off. So 9th fret tap with the right hand, pull off, which is almost like you're sort of just plucking that while this finger's already down, to the 5th fret on the G string, and then from there, just do a pull off to the 2nd fret. 9, 5, 7. So you can put them back to back if you wanted to. 9, 2, 5, 9, 5, 2, 9, 2, 5, 9, 5, 2. Or you could just do one of each. You just do either of them separately. So you could go 9, 2, 5, and then do that same thing again. Or 9, 5, 2. So the hardest part about this is getting the timing even between the notes. So instead of accidentally going like, you want to go like bum, 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 and gradually speed it up. When you get to where it starts sounding uneven again, that may be as fast as you should go, and just kind of stay there or slow it back down just to make sure that you're really getting the muscle memory before pushing ahead, and that you're giving the notes an equal duration. Same thing with all of these, really. So that's really about it for tapping. Everything else is kind of just a variation of those. I guess you could do things like tapping 2 notes at the same time. So this is a double stop where you play 2 notes on the bass at the same time. And this is a tapped double stop. So you could take your pointer finger and your middle finger, for instance. You could line them up on a fret. So you could do like the 9th fret on the D string and the 9th fret on the G string, right? And you could pull off to 2 notes that are being held down. So that's kind of cool. There's some songs where I do a little bit of tapping with the ring finger on the right hand, and the reason I do that is because it's shorter than the middle finger, and then you can hit 2 notes at the same time to make like a major third. So this would be like the 10th fret on the D string and the 9th fret on the G string. So that gives you a little major kind of chord, a major third. And then if you want it to be minor, I would do the ring finger to the pointer finger. So that would be the 10th fret to the 8th fret. You can use a middle finger too, and just whatever way makes sense to you. Just you leave a fret empty in between if you want that. And then we could also tap power chords, which on guitar, that's like where you're playing the root and the 5th at the same time. So that would be like, I would use my pointer finger and my ring finger to do that. And that would be like the 9th fret on the D string and the 11th fret on the G string. right? So you can do that kind of stuff too. So you have chords going on the right hand, little 2-note chords, and then your left hand will be playing a single note. So Seth says you can do chords with tapping, or is that too hard? Really, this is doing chords. So these are 2-note chords with one hand, right? But check this out. What if you did 2 notes with the 2 notes of a chord with the left hand, and then did the root note down low with the right hand? So let's do a C major chord. We've got a C down here, and then we want an E and a G. So there's a G right here and an E right here. So this gives a cool voicing. Well, it would help if I was playing the right ones. That's not an E. Sorry, E would be the 13th fret. That was a B. I don't know what I was doing. I guess I was trying to do a G major chord there, but that's not the way I want to do that one. So just scratch everything I said. Let's do a G major chord, but that's going to be a G, a B, and a D. So in order to get a B and a D, I'm going to do that kind of tapping that I was telling you about, right? Where basically we'll do the 9th fret with the ring finger of the right hand on the D string, and then I'm going to use my middle finger. You could use your pointer finger. It just causes your wrist to have an angle at it, so I'm just going to use my middle finger so that I don't have to have as steep of an angle. But basically a 9th fret on the D string, 7th fret on the G string, and that gives us our B note and our D note. And then we can play a low G down here. I'm going to use my middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string for that note. So that's one voicing you could do. You could do one where you omit the 5th. So that would be like you're doing a G down low here, and then you're doing a 9th fret on the D string, and then a 12th fret on the G string. So that really requires you just to know your notes pretty well. If you're trying to do chords across 2 hands with the tapping so that you get this like spread out voicing, you can totally do that. And there are plenty of players that do that. Primus has some songs that do that. I'm sure Dream Theater does. Nothing's coming to mind, but I'm sure John Young does some of that kind of tapping too. He likes the arpeggio tapping as well. He probably does all these types really. And then Seth says, but it's hard to do all 3 notes with one hand. You can. There are certain chords that are easier than others. But yeah, you theoretically can do 3. Let me give you an example. So if you want to play, let's say that you're going to do an A chord and you want to do an A, a C, and an E. Let's do a C sharp because we're going to do an A major chord. It's a lot easier on U bass than it is on electric bass. If you have the polyurethane strings. If you have the metal strings, this is probably going to hurt your hand. So yeah, you theoretically can. One of the reasons why we don't see this as much is because if you have 3 notes in that in one register like that with the bass, things start getting muddy. So it's kind of just like we do the 2 notes up high and the 1 down low to create separation between the voices so that they don't clash with each other as much. So that's the main reason why you probably won't see too many tapping things where one hand is getting all 3 notes, although you could. It's definitely something that you could do. There are people that do it. I'm sure it's probably more common on a 6-string bass rather than a 4-string bass, and rather than a U bass especially, because with the 6-string bass there are just more options. So I was doing a major chord there. It might be easier to do certain other types of chords, although I don't think they're really easier. Let me think for a second. A major 7 chord. You could do that to do a major 7 chord. But honestly, I don't see it being as useful as doing, some sort of bass line down low that includes the root and then doing a 2-note chord. So I like using this for reggae. Like if I'm trying to do a reggae thing, let's say I'm in the key of G, because G is easier to do. The lower down we are with the left hand, the more room we have to to experiment with the right hand here, and this range sounds better than being up high. So anything higher than the key of G will probably push us past our comfort zone on the U bass, past what really sounds good, I think. So that's why I'm using the key of G as an example. But let's say we want to have a G major chord, you know, that kind of thing. Let's just put these on the upbeats. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And then if you want to do like a C chord, I think we're going to do a C and E and a G. So we could do the E and the G up here. And you might want to get good at doing your arpeggios on one string, because if you're using the D string and the G string with your right hand, then unless you time it to where the notes that you need are right in between where that hand's not hitting those, you're probably going to want to keep your hands separated by strings. So saying like my left hand's going to get the E and the A string, and my right hand is going to get the D and the G string. So a lot of times when I write little tapping things, I keep that in mind. Okay, so that's the basics of tapping. We've talked about the two-handed tapping that's more like a piano, or your right hand and your left hand are doing different things at the same time. We talked about the arpeggio style tapping, where your hands are working together to play an arpeggio pretty fast. We talked about the Van Halen style. So let's go back now to the piano style that we started with. And basically, we'll give our left hand a pattern to play, and then our right hand will play a melody over a repeating left-handed pattern. So a real easy one is like roots and fifths, right? So we could do that. So we could do a G chord, and that would be the 3rd fret on the E string, and then we'll hit the 5th fret on the A string. So we're outlining what bass line we could play on a G chord. Then for a C chord, we'll go underneath and we'll hit 3rd fret on the A string, but we're trying to off the D and the G string. So rather than going up to the 5th fret on the D string to get our 5th for that one, we'll bring that down an octave. So we'll end up with 3rd fret on the A string, then 3rd fret on the E string. More on a C chord. And then we'll do a D chord the same way we did the C chord. So to do that, we'd end up playing the 5th fret on the A string, and then the 5th fret on the E string. So we've got a G chord, then a C chord, then a D chord. Let's see. I think I'm going to run out of frets, unfortunately, Seth. I thought about it. That would be a pretty easy melody. That's the other thing. If you can have a melody that's simple and uses very little range, which that one uses a little bit too much range for this example, for that key, maybe it would work if I did it in F. I mean, it's really an E, but tapping E is kind of tricky. You got me sidetracked. Let me just stick with what I'm doing in G. Okay. We've got our country bass line. Just practice doing this with our left hand. The D chord, and back to the G chord. So then now we just need notes that are kind of melodic. Yeah, On the Road Again might be a fun tapping chord melody. I'll see if I can make that work. That's actually a pretty good idea. So we got to come up with some sort of melody that makes sense with this. We could do the same set of notes that we started with on that piano example from earlier. Something like that. Then, whoops, hit the wrong one. Anyway, I keep wanting to go to a C chord, but I'm trying to stay on the G. Folsom Prison might also be a good one. Let's see. I hear that train a come. Let's see. Starts on the third. It's gonna be kind of hard to stay on the strings, though. That presents kind of the same problem that the other one did, where it's kind of in the middle of the range. I almost have to like get the melody note with this hand. I don't know. I think it's the melody would be either too low or too high to really make it work that way. But yeah, that one could be good. But yeah, trying to do that. Hear that train a coming, hear that train a coming, rolling around the bend. Yeah, so you could almost make it work, but it's a little tricky. Those are good ideas, though. Maybe country is something kind of simple to start with on the tapping. You just have to pick a song in the right key that doesn't really go too far out of the range so that you can make a melody like that. But yeah, there are a lot of times where that's what I'm doing with arrangements. If I do a tapping arrangement, I've done it with Christmas songs and stuff too. But you just try to figure out a melody that's not too hard for your right hand, while you play the bass notes with your left hand or a bass groove. You could just do a choo-choo train. Yeah, the hard part would be like trying to do this and trying to like do the drum beat. I can't do that. Very cool though. So let's see, Iliad. Just so you know, yesterday I bought my first U-bass after a long time. I wanted one. Your videos really helped me pick one. Oh, awesome. Very, very cool. Which model did you end up getting? Yeah, which U-bass? That's really cool. Congratulations on your U-bass. That's awesome. I'm glad my videos are helping. So yeah, so all this tapping stuff. I mean, if you get enough independence in one hand, you might be able to even do a drum beat with the other hand. I haven't mastered that really. We'll see. I'm trying to go boom, pop, pop, with one hand. If I could do that 10 times faster, then that would work. Okay, so I guess that's kind of basically it for the tapping thing, but essentially you try to come up with a repetitive pattern with the left hand so you can focus all your energy on the right hand. So if there's a song that does the same groove all the way through and the right hand melody doesn't have very many notes, that might be a good one to start with tapping. I think I did a version of Heart and Soul. That one's a little bit trickier, but there's the beginning part where it's, and that might be a really good way to get used to doing the chords where I was talking about, where you're tapping the root with the left hand, and then I'm doing the root in the third with the right hand. But I thought that was kind of a good way to voice it rather than trying to do the whole chords, you know, going what would that be? Yeah, so you could do that too. But just knowing what the individual notes in the chord are and letting your left hand get the root and your right hand either getting the root in the third or getting the third and the fifth if you want the full chord represented. But yeah, that's kind of the idea with all the tapping stuff. So let's take a break from the tapping thing. I want to answer this question real quick. What would you recommend for a first U-bass? So it depends on where you're coming from. Are you coming from the ukulele world, where you know how to play an ukulele already and you're switching over because maybe there's an ensemble that needs a bass member. If that's the case, then I would probably go with something. I think one like this. This is the Kala Wanderer, and I think they stopped making them with the rubber strings, so the current one would probably be the Nomad. I remember liking the Nomad. So something like that, if you just want simplicity, just getting used to it, you're not sure if you're going to play it that much, so you don't want something super expensive. I'd go with something like a Kala Nomad probably. Um, Personally, I just like the Kalas a little bit better. They're the Hadines or Hadians, they're good as well. I think someone just posted that they got a Donner and it didn't have the back plate to be able to change strings as easily. So I'd probably go against that one just for that reason. But I think the Nomad would probably be my first choice right now. If you're an electric bass player switching over, you may want one with the metal strings so that it's not as big of an adjustment. It depends on what you want it for, right? If you want to imitate an upright bass, I would say get the polyurethane strings on it one way or the other. So the Kala Nomad probably still. And then I really like the Journeyman model. That's what I play a lot. But I put flat wound strings on it, and that's why I like it so much. So if you're going to soup it up and change the strings out, I like that one. I know a lot of people play the I don't know about for the first U bass. I'm still planning on getting one like this, but an ebony model. I know there are a lot of people that like running the fretless ebony U bass with flat wound strings, and that's something that I kind of want to do. But I don't think I'd recommend that as a first U bass. Something like the Nomad, and the other things in that range. If you just like the way the other ones look better, follows that are about that price range, then that's fine. I think the Bamboo one's all right too. It's a little brighter. I liked the brightness when I was playing on it, but out of the two out of the five that I tried last year when I was doing review videos, I'd say the Kala Nomad and the Bamboo model were my favorites of those. And the Nomad's probably the most accessible, and it just, it looks plain. It looks really almost identical to this with black strings. So that one's good unless you just don't like the aesthetic. In that case, the Journeyman may have a nicer aesthetic if you like that. You can get the wood grain model with the polyurethane strings. It's a little more expensive, but it's something you can do. But that's more of an aesthetic thing, and I think the Nomad's probably a great beginner one. Okay, so Iliad says, unfortunately, there were not many models, and you chose the Bamboo. I really liked the Bamboo model. So out of the ones that I tried, I thought it was cool in a lot of different ways. So I don't think that's I think that's a great choice out of what you had for sure. But yeah, I remember both Nomad and the Bamboo playing very well. I didn't have any problems with fret buzz really on any of the instruments I played on, of the Kala ones. But yeah. But I think that's good. And then Cassie says, I joined partway through, but would like to watch from the beginning later. I also bought my first U-bass last year. Very cool. You got the Bamboo as well. Awesome. Thanks for your recommendation. Yeah, so the Bamboo is kind of cool. It has a little bit of a brighter sound, which if you don't like that with an amp, you can always EQ it differently to get the lower sound. But I think acoustically it might project a little bit better, so it might actually be a good thing acoustically. Not that we're playing acoustically all the time, because it really doesn't compete with even a ukulele's volume unless you have the metal strings, in which case it kind of does, but it's still a little quiet. All right, so great stuff. Okay, you connect directly to Cubase and you play like a beginner. Do you have tips on how to make it sound good? There's always going to be some noise. One of the things that you kind of have to do is learn how to play around that. Sometimes the string noise is from your fingers sticking to the strings a little bit. So any sort of thing you can do to get your fingers to be less like sweaty or something, that's a problem I have at least. Some sort of, I know some people use powder on their hands to dry their strings, or sorry, to dry their hands, not the strings. And then some people do the opposite. They use water to. So I mean, there are all sorts of things. There's actually a video. What's her name? I think it's Julie or Julia Hofer, Hofer, Hofer. I'm not sure which way to pronounce it, but I'm really bad with names. If y'all haven't figured that out for me, probably butchering y'all's names already. But anyway, she has a really good video on that, and she ultimately decided to just change the strings to the Thunder Reds. She found that they were less sticky than other strings. I know for me, the other ones that are less sticky are the I think they're Pahoehoes. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's something of that nature. I know you're supposed to pronounce the E's. I just don't know how to pronounce the E's. But anyway, that's another one there. Yeah, so Jacob says that he saw that video. Yeah, it's a good video. It's a really helpful video, I think. But she ultimately tried all these different things that everybody does to try to reduce string noise, because it's a huge problem, really. Unless you like the sound, in which case, you know, try to get rid of the sounds you don't like, and that. So the way that I do it the most is like I'll EQ the highs down. So especially if you have Cubase, you might be able to just figure out which thing is making the most noise, and the noise you like the least, whatever frequency that is, just kind of drop it, you know. So that's something you could do on Cubase after recording. On here, though, if you have a triple band EQ, which you probably do if you have any of the models we were talking about, some of the more expensive ones only have one knob, and it's a little harder to do on those. But with the ones with three, just drop the treble, just not all the way, but just drop it until it's an acceptable amount of string noise for you. Meaning, like, it'll always be there, but if you can reduce it to the point where it's not distracting to you, then it's fine. And by the way, if you're in a band and playing with a band, the other sounds of the other instruments will probably cancel out that string noise. So you don't really have to worry about it when you're playing with a group or playing with a drummer. You don't have to worry about it as much. But when you're just kind of like exposed playing by yourself, then the secret might be, you know, don't have the treble too high, because if you have the treble too high, you hear everything, all that stuff. And mine may not be as noisy because these strings are ancient at this point, so they're kind of dead for whatever reason. They haven't like broken or anything, but they're I want to say this is there's some string noise. I want to say they're like 3 years old at this point. So it may be that the older the strings get, they don't have quite as much string noise, but they still have some. If you're trying to, so there's a lot of ways. If there's certain string noise like buzzing, like that kind of thing, then you want to make sure that you're not fretting the note too far back, right? And sometimes, which this instrument has a few places where that's not the problem, like I'll fret the note correctly and it still has a buzz there. I had to do a truss rod adjustment on this. It's probably in need of another one. I think what happened was when I fixed that, it caused a buzz in the higher frets instead. And then I made an arrangement where I wanted to use the higher frets. So I undid the adjustment, which caused that buzz to come back on the first fret on the A string. But what I've noticed is that the Nomad and the Bamboo model didn't have problems with there just being buzzes on certain notes like that. That maybe Kala has gotten a little bit more consistent in the way they make the cheaper instruments, so that you don't really have to worry about that kind of thing as much, which is great. So that's why I would kind of recommend the Nomad over the Wanderer. You should get an older Wanderer that that had that issue. I'm sure probably fixed it with the Wanderer at this point too. But the more expensive models don't have that issue about certain frets buzzing, unless it wasn't set up correctly, or unless you know, you did something crazy with it, like leave it out in the heat or leave it out in the cold. like extreme cold, extreme heat can kind of affect an instrument. But anyway, so that's one kind of sound. And to get rid of some of that, it's really just technique stuff, right? So if it's not the instrument, then some of it's technique, and you may want to practice like muting strings before you let go of a note. So rather than like letting go of a note like that, you know, you may have to mute the note before going to the other strings. So I'm kind of using these 3 fingers to stop the vibration, so that way when I let go of it, the pickup's not getting as strong of a vibration, so it's not going to have as much string noise. I have just the strings being older kind of helps. If it's if the noise that you don't like is the strings ringing out, you can get something like this to kind of put down here so that the strings don't ring out. But yeah, the string noise is a big issue. So I understand that you know, that is a thing. And then you just got to kind of watch your technique on both hands to make sure you're not hitting the string an extra time. And when you go to let go of notes, that you can kind of, you know, mute the strings, like I said, with other fingers. Once again, if your fingertips get kind of sweaty or something, then some sort of drying agent, making sure in between playing to wipe your fingers off, because that's the one I think that bugs me the most. But yeah, I've turned the treble up to get the most string noise. But see, that might be a thing. Like I have a little string noise when I let go of a note there, and it's unwanted, right? That little at the end of the note. But if you kind of, whoops, I'm not even doing a good example. I guess there's not really much. If you mute the string a little bit, maybe you can have less of a noise. I don't know. It just depends on which one you like better, I guess. But I would not have my treble up that high in the first place. Even with the tapping videos, I didn't have the treble up very high. Never over the midway point on that knob for me. Okay, so that was a very, very long answer, but hopefully it helped you guys. Do you have any other questions or anything else? It can be tapping related. It can be just general U-bass related, just anything of that nature. Whoa. So one thing I'm going to say with the tapping is that you have to be very accurate. And I think the hardest part is, since there's so much going on, being accurate with both hands can be tricky. So you may have to look back and forth between the hands. And when you're practicing something over and over again, you may want to do it one time where you're focusing on the left hand and one time where you're focusing more on the right hand. Like, for instance, this whole thing that I was doing. When I looked over at the left hand too much, my right hand started scooting slowly up, and I ended up hitting a different fret. So that's it's a little thing from a Mozart piano piece. Let's see. I can't get it at first. That's what it is. But anyway, that whole thing, you have to look at one hand and make sure you're kind of in the middle of the frets and kind of get one hand used to it. And then you can focus on the other hand and just work on the accuracy with each one. All right. So very helpful. I'm glad I could help Cassie. I'm glad I could help Eliad. And then Jacob says, do you like acoustic basses? Do you mean like upright basses, like what's in the bag over there? Or do you mean like acoustic electric basses that are just like a giant acoustic guitar with 4 strings? I guess I could answer the question either. I really like those. I used to have an acoustic electric bass guitar, and I felt like the U-bass did everything that I wanted it to do because I don't play with people around a campfire a bunch. If I was doing that, I'd probably have a use for that, because the advantage to the acoustic electric bass, okay, that was your question anyway. The advantage to the acoustic electric bass is acoustically, you can hear it. If you're playing with a guitar player, you can hear it. You know, it has a big enough body to project the sound loud enough, and enough string tension with the longer neck and the big enough strings to really project the sound to be heard in an acoustic setting. So if a guitar player is strumming and you're playing along, chances are you'll be able to hear it to some degree. So I like them in that sense. If you're playing with an acoustic person, just jamming, just doing this, that, and the other, they can hear you. You can hear you. It's great. I've jammed with my friend on, he was playing guitar and I was playing the U-bass with the metal round wound strings, and he still complained about that not really being loud enough, being 6 feet apart, because this was back when we were social distancing. Being 6 feet apart, he said he couldn't hear me, and or couldn't hear me well enough at the very least. So in that sense, it's almost necessary if you're going to go completely acoustic. So I do like them in that sense. I don't prefer them over the U-basses because they're very bulky. It's hard to figure out. For me, like storage might be an issue or something. I could just lean it against a wall, but like they're not portable if you're trying to travel with them. And they also have a lot of string noise. Even when you plug them in, they have the same kind of pickup that these do. So, I mean, in the general sense, piezo pickup that picks up the vibration literally physically and not magnetically. So they're not really much less noisy, a little bit maybe, but and then I find really with the round wound strings on that big of an instrument that they can be a little bit more abrasive. But I still liked it overall. I had one for quite a while. I ended up selling it. There's a video on my channel where I go to, and you can probably find that acoustic bass versus U-bass, or U-bass versus acoustic electric bass. But yeah, they're pretty cool, and they're really cool if you like jamming around campfires with people playing guitar, or if you're jamming without amplification with people regularly. So that's kind of my take on them. I think they're cool. I don't really like the sound better than U-bass or anything, but that's why I ended up selling mine. I almost felt like it was obsolete for my uses, but they're cool. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions or anything else tapping related or U-bass related? I'm just going to reiterate that I think that the easiest U-basses to tap on are the ones with the polyurethane strings. And that's why when you see my tapping arrangements, most of the time I'll be playing one of these just because of the ease of it. It's like you barely have to push down to get the notes to come out. Whereas with metal strings, even on an electric bass guitar, it takes a little bit more force, a little bit more push, a little more effort, and your hands can wear out a little bit quicker because of that. So if you're doing something really repetitive and working on it until you get it right, you can work more on these strings, getting the coordination and getting other things, even if you intend to play it on a metal string bass later on. But that's really about it. So just to recap the different kinds of tapping, we've got the piano style where the hands are doing things independently of each other, where you have to be able to hit sometimes the right hand by itself, sometimes the left and right together, sometimes the left hand by itself, so forth. You've got the kind where you're basically thinking in a linear path, like doing a melody or doing a bass line, but splitting the workload between the two hands. So that was that arpeggio style. Only one hand at a time is playing notes. There aren't two notes at the same time in that style. Then there's the Eddie Van Halen style where you're on one string. And that's relying more on hammer-ons and pull-offs. So it's not just literally tapping out of nowhere, but it's like you might have the momentum from tapping here and then pulling off to the other note rather than going. Instead of doing them all individually, you're just pulling off to the other note. So it's a smoother style of tapping. It's good for like legato passages. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, you can tap chords. You can tap 2 notes at a time. 3 is a little harder, but you still technically can. And that's basically it. So I hope you've enjoyed kind of working on that. If you have any other questions, just always leave them in the comments below. And that way I can do them on a future video. With these live streams, right now I'm doing them once a month on the first Thursday of each month. And then with the Tuesday videos, I'm doing every other week with that. So it might end up you know, I might end up being on the first and the third week, but sometimes it ends up being a little bit different than that, just because right now I'm just doing every other week. So, so you may have to check to see if there's a video coming out one week versus not. I had a video out this week, so I'll skip next week and then I'll come back the following week to let you know where I'm at in that pattern right now. All right. Well, that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed all this tapping nonsense. Also, don't overdo tapping in a band that doesn't want you to, right? Because you could get kicked out of a band for that kind of stuff. And then, oh, someone just asked, are you going to do a giveaway soon? Probably not. I've only done one on the channel so far. I've been thinking about it, and I may do that. I think part of the difficulty with giveaways is just that if I make it open to like the whole world, every country has different policies on how giveaways need to work, and sometimes they don't all make sense together. You know what I mean? So and some places just don't allow it, and I think it's because it's hard to figure out how to tax giveaways and stuff, and so that's part of the reason. And then some of them are kind of like you have to have some sort of challenge or some sort of puzzle be solved, which I thought was kind of an interesting rule. You can't just give it away for them, for those countries, but then other countries say that you have to do it randomly, or you have to, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of laws that I don't completely know with giveaways. So honestly, I'm a little worried to do a giveaway. If it wasn't for that, I would do them more often. But I'll probably do one again at some point. But I'm not sure that it'll be soon. All right, and then Cassie says, it's been fun and informative. Thank you. Sounds lovely. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Seth, thanks for hanging out for pretty much the whole time. I think you're here the whole time. So you guys have an excellent month as far as live stream goes, and an excellent couple of weeks until I see you on the next Tuesday video. All right, have a good one. Cheers.